VSIN, the sports betting network.
Welcome back to Cashing Out here on VSIN, the sports betting network.
Cashing Out continues with me, Joe Ceraulo, and our fantasy expert, Tony Cutillo. Follow him on Twitter at Rise with Tony. You can hear him on SiriusXM Fantasy Radio. The man does not miss with his Thursday night props. Just dropped some DFS Week 11 knowledge on us. Let's get in to these Thursday night props now. Eagles, Commanders. This one was up in the air depending on where you shopped around. You could catch Philly laying 3, laying 3.5. Now it's almost universally the Eagles minus 3.5. We'll get to the spread. We'll get to the total later on. Let's get to what Tony specializes in, some winning props. Starting the backfield with me, baby. My old running back, your current running back. What do you think Saquon Barkley does?
Man, let me tell you something. I just want to know why when we hear all that, and I know it's a quarterback driven award, but he needs to be talked about in the MVP conversation only because he's the main reason why this Eagles team is turned around. And, you look at it, and I want to go his over this week of 18.5 attempts. And I wouldn't look at last week, as a barometer where he only had 14. But I will look at it as looking at he's coming off of 22 and 27 respectively. There's been a lot of talk in Philly this week, about overuse of Saquon Barkley. I think his range and his cap is 20 to 21. So, which is well within that 18.5. And listen, Washington has a very, very stout defense, and you need the run to set up the pass. Last week, they were passing to set up the run. This week, they run to set up the pass. So, I think this is an easy covered over 18.5 attempts.
I love it. I love it. Short week always scares me with attempts because it's such a physically demanding position. But you're 100% right. That offense, as many talented pieces as there are, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, that offense seemingly this year goes as Saquon goes. And as Saquon has really been heating up, they haven't just been squeaking out wins against bad teams like Cleveland. They've been starting to blow teams out as Saquon has gotten going. I just mentioned another really talented piece to that offense, Devonta Smith. What do you like him to do in this short week Thursday night game?
Yeah, listen, here's the thing about the short week, too. Remember, the Eagles were able to rest their starters, late in the third quarter of that Dallas game, right? Which was huge, right? Listen, that whole game from a receiving aspect is just completely indifferent because the game was just a complete blowout. Devonta Smith, before last week, just his 80-plus yards per game. He is, to me, the best route runner on this team, obviously. And here's the thing. He catches that ball in very, very tight windows. So I look at this game as those big plays have to happen. So his over 52.5 yards could come on 2 catches. I expected to have one really, really big play. And Washington does get beat with elite route runners. So I'll look for Jalen to really try to fit it in like we've seen these catches before. And that's not going to be to A.J. Brown. That's going to be Devonta Smith.
All right. Saquon over 18.5 carries. Devonta Smith over 52.5 receiving yards. But you're not betting on either of those guys to get into the end zone. Tony, I love this play. I typically, for some crazy reason, love this play against my Giants because he's got a track record of getting in the end zone against the Giants. Who do you think breaks the pylon for a score?
Yeah, man. What about some Kenny Gainwell action, right?
I love it.
Well, you know what the thing is? One thing that, and this is where I get the advantage of being in Philadelphia and covering a team and watching a team. The one thing that the Washington Redskins do get beat a lot with is the draw. And Saquon doesn't normally get the draw, but Kenny Gainwell gets the draw. And we just talked about the high ceiling of 20 to 21 attempts. Well, that's about 5 or 6 off the average of Saquon. So where are they going to go to? They're going to go to Kenny Gainwell. And one thing that people have to remember is there's been plenty of times this year where Saquon has broken big chunks and big plays and got down to like the 6 or the 7 and had to come out because he was winded. And then the goal line carries go to Kenny Gainwell. So plus 650. I love this play. I love this play, especially on the short week. Lots of running in these games. And when you get a Commanders game against the Eagles for that battle of supremacy, man, all things are out the window. So I love them to switch it up with some Kenny Gainwell action this week.
By the way, you know what's crazy is that you're getting such a good number here, plus 650. When I try to take him against my Giants, it's like plus 350, maybe even 3-1. The market has adapted and adjusted so much that they expect Gainwell to get a look at the end zone when Philly's playing the Giants, that the price gets slashed in half. It's the most absurd thing. All right, I mentioned you might have some homerism in your picks here. How about a former Eagle, now on the Commanders, who you're looking to maybe fade in this spot? What do you like?
Listen, I love Zach Ertz from a PPR perspective, but one thing he doesn't do is get any kind of yak. He's literally got the worst yak of any number one tight end in all football. The guy literally catches and falls. He did it for years, right? He runs great routes. He just has no yak. Okay. So under 15.5 for his longest reception. Listen, lots of targets, but here's the thing too. The Eagles linebackers, a guy that you've been hearing a lot about is Zach Bond, who's been an absolute gem of a find under Fangio. And by the way, Nakobe Dean, who's really playing balls out in pass coverage. They're so athletic that even if he does catch the ball, they're going to stop him at will anyway. So from him falling and athletic linebackers, I'm going to go under on the 15.5 longest reception.
Yeah, Nakobe Dean, I'm glad you mentioned him and what he's done specifically against the pass. He has been terrific in coverage, really beyond impressive for the youngster out there in Philly. All right, Tony, you give us about one defensive play a week. This is a juicy plus money play. What do you like?
This one shocked me, man. Really did. Like, plus 145 plus money for Dante Fowler, who's been one of the best pass rushers in all of football. Okay. Especially in the last 6 games. So all we're doing is going over a quarter of a sack. Okay. So if he gets half a sack or a sack, you're going to bang this number home. Listen, Hurts holds on to the ball way too long. Okay. A lot of those routes in that offense, they take time to develop. And unfortunately, the biggest drawback of Jalen Hurts' game is he doesn't get rid of the ball early enough. He holds on to it and he gets blindsided a lot. Dante Fowler has 8 sacks in his last 6 games. And 3 of those games, he's had at least 2 sacks. Whether Mailata comes back or not, I don't think it matters. It's a short week. This guy's explosive. And I would be shocked if I don't see Hurts on the ground by Dante Fowler at least one time in this game.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jalen Hurts not an easy guy to sack. He's a big physical guy. He's fast as hell. He's shifty in the pocket. He can escape a lot of sacks. Mailata being out, to your point, that is crucial here for Fowler, one of the best edge rushers in the league. Man, I think that's terrific value. I think it's a terrific play. Let's talk about this line. Eagles laying 3.5. Tony, home teams have won 3 straight on Thursday night on the short week. They've covered 2 out of 3. Baltimore, of course, won last week, didn't cover, winning by a point when they were favored by 6. Do your Eagles win? And more importantly, do they cover?
This is so an NFC East line. Like, it really is, man. Like, the 3.5, I'm not touching. I'm gonna be out. Like, so many of these games over the years I've watched within a field goal, within 1 point, especially with the dynamic of both of these teams that like to go for 2 a lot, right? They do. And
don't remind me, Tony, don't remind me about Nick Sirianni and his damn 2-point conversions against the Jacksonville Jaguars for a team that's up 22-0. Should have run Jacksonville out of the state. Should have won that game 38-7. And they don't even get me a cover on laying the 7 points. So I'm talking about Nick Sirianni and his freaking 2-point conversions, man. I hate Nick Sirianni.
Listen, man. He is kind of, he's coaching his team. They win, but it's almost like they win in spite of the coach. It's almost like I'm not a Doug Peterson guy, and they won the Super Bowl in spite of Doug Peterson. And I say that all the time. So I do. I'm not. I think Frank Reich won that Super Bowl. I really do.
Yeah.
Right. They had tremendous coaching on that team. So looking at Sirianni, yeah, he bothers me. But I will say this: I'm going to take my homer hat off for a second. And if I'm a betting guy, which I am for this segment, I'm looking at the money line for the Commanders at plus 150. I know I may get killed for saying this, but I really like, the way this Washington team is balling. And eventually the Eagles are going to hit a roadblock and have to go back up again. So this could be that game. And to get plus 150 in this kind of battle, I don't know, man. I think I might have to bet on that.
Wild. I actually think the Eagles win this one. I think the Commanders win later in the year when that one's played at Washington. Tony, I got to say, man, I'm Italian. I love most Italians. You're one of my favorite Italians. Nick Sirianni, easily my least favorite Italian. Up next, folks, it's Top Hat Tuesday. Gonna get 5 blind bets, see what I can do with them. Don't go anywhere. It's Cashing Out with Joe Ceraulo.